Ready, set, go.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys here with my friend Seth Perler, who has been on the podcast before. He's an executive function coach, and he and I are doing this kind of spontaneously because there are so many questions right now about back to school and what that looks like for kids with differences, with different skills, with different abilities, with things like that. So, Seth, do you want to say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, well, hey, and if you're watching this on YouTube and you're my audience, first of all, hi to my audience and everybody. This is Wendy Bertagnole, and her last name is complicated for my brain.
It's ridiculous.
And Wendy has an amazing parenting podcast. So if you haven't heard it, we'll link it up here and y'all can check her out. So Wendy, tell us about you. Give us your 30-second.
Yeah, so I have my master's degree in special education. I started out as a teacher, and at that time, I think I was one of those really annoying people that thought that I knew it all, like I could handle anything. And then I had a child who was not by the book, and everything changed for me. And I just saw how difficult it is when there are kids in your life who push the boundaries, who might be an exception to the typical parenting rules. And so now what I do is I coach parents through my podcast and through online programs and how to understand their kids and the motivations behind their behaviors. A lot of times that means taking the route of looking through the lens of sensory processing, but really just diving into why challenging behaviors exist and what we can do about them as parents.
Excellent. And Wendy will be on TFOS, the Executive Function Online Summit, which is coming up August 21st, 2020, free conference for summits. So she's one of our talented speakers there talking about sensory issues. All right. So what am I supposed to say? Hi, audience.
So let's go in first and talk about what is executive function. How would a person know if their child struggles with executive function?
Great. So for parents and teachers or anybody who's out there listening, therapists, grandparents, whoever, how do you know if your child is struggling with executive function? So executive function takes place in the front part of the brain, and executive function is how we execute complex tasks. So for example, Wendy is recording her podcast right now. She is executing a complex task. She has to be able to prioritize her time to be here right now. She has to be able to organize things to get it going. She has to be able to have enough motivation or not procrastinate, which means she has to self-start or initiate the task. Those all mean the same thing. So she has to do that in order to execute this task of creating this. She has to persist, meaning that when she and I are done recording today, she has to still upload it, and she has to still write the show notes, and she still has to get it up on there's all the moving pieces to that. And as far as your children are concerned, they might have to write a paper or do homework or keep a planner or organize a backpack or clean their desk or do a chore or something like that, or get a driver's license or do a college application. All of these things are complicated tasks that the human brain has to be able to juggle a lot of things to accomplish any of these. And for the kids who struggle with executive function, who have challenges in this area, first of all, know that the brain is still developing. The brain will continue to develop until your child's 25 or 30 years old. Thank goodness, because we have a lot of room for making positive interventions that will help them learn to execute better. But if this stuff is not natural to them and they don't figure it out, they're really going to struggle as adults with career, with relationships, with finances, with all of these, with the goals, with big life, real goals. So executive function is how the brain helps us get these things done. All the things that we need to do that. So if you're listening to this, right away if you're like, oh yeah, I'm concerned that my child or student, this student is struggling with getting things done. They're always late, or they don't know what's going on, or they don't know what the details of the homework are, or they do their homework and forget to turn it in, or all of these sorts of things.
I was just going to say, it's easy sometimes to look at these labels and just think, oh, my kid is just being blank. What are some of those fill in the blank things that would be indicators that there is an executive function difficulty there?
Yeah, these blanks are very rooted in misunderstanding.
Mhm.
But those blanks are, my kid is just being lazy. They just don't care about school. If they only cared, everything would be okay. If they just tried harder, if they just pulled them up by the bootstraps, if they just chose to be more motivated, they've got so much potential. They need more discipline. I need to punish them and take something away to get them to do things. I need to reward them more to get them to do things. I need to lecture or nag or use logic or reason more to get them to do things. So those are sort of the things that we say as a culture, like that. Those are some things that are embedded deeply in misunderstanding that often come out, that don't take into consideration the legitimacy of executive function struggles. This is a developmental issue. A lot of students get it earlier and they appear to be more motivated or to care more, or that, those sorts of things. But it's not that. It's that developmentally, a lot of students have exceptional executive function, and they pick up how to organize and do planners and stay on top of their homework and things like that. These other kids need direct instruction and help and support in building skills. It's not about punishment and reward and motivation. It's about building skills.
I love that you're talking about the skills because I can picture parents saying, well, my kid is smart. I know my kid is smart. They just don't finish their homework. They just don't care to turn it in. They just don't realize that it's important to keep their room clean, or they're just trying to get under my skin. All those things that you said. Tell us about the correlation between intelligence and executive function.
So that's a really good question. And that brings into my mind, at least, also processing issues and attentional issues. So when there are processing issues and attentional issues, and you're thinking about intelligence, these things are not um, what their intelligence is all about. I'm not, my brain, personal brain right now is not grabbing the words I'm looking for, but these are, let's imagine that you've heard of the bell curve. Some people are on
Mhm.
this side, some people are on that side, and there's something called asynchrony. And asynchrony, so imagine the bell curve as this 2D bell curve that you see on a regular piece of paper. And the student might be in the, 94th percentile in something, or in the second percentile in something, or the 50th. So, but that is very misleading. And I want you to now imagine a three-dimensional bell that has tons of different metrics we can look at, some that are measured and some that are not. What metrics do we typically measure? Well, we typically look at scores, grades, letter grades, and then we look at math, science, social studies, reading, writing. So we have sort of these but do we measure creativity? Do we measure friendliness? I don't know that's,
Oh,
I guess you could measure that.
yeah,
Do
social
we,
skills
yeah,
for
do
sure.
we measure musical ability? Yeah, social, yeah, interpersonal, the not Bloom's, the multiple intelligence theory stuff, and Howard Gardner. And so anyhow, we can look at all these different metrics. So intelligence, to me, is very shallowly perceived. But these things are just, I think of executive function, or even aspects of executive function, and then all of these other areas on that 3D bell. These are like, if you were to take that 3D bell and take a piece of string and glue it on, and there are like so many different metrics you could put on there as a string that you could look at. And what happens is that we want to really, what we ultimately want to do is help our kids build their strengths, their passions, their interests, their curiosities. But often for these kids, their strengths are not measured, and therefore are not given the attention that they deserve. And their weaknesses are measured and stand out like a sore thumb. And we're just pushing on the weaknesses year after year after year, often to the point where they're just sick and tired of the class or the content area, and things like that, thus decreasing motivation and
Right. I was just going to say
execution.
that would definitely not help me to be motivated to do anything if it was really difficult for me and everybody was just making all of these assumptions about why it's difficult for me without really hitting the mark of what skills I'm missing. My heart goes out to all of these kids. I actually have a child who struggles with executive function, so I can see it at home, and it can um It can be hard as a parent because you want them to perform in certain ways. You want them to keep their room clean. You want them to bring home their homework or turn their homework in. But all of those things can literally get lost in the mix, lost in the shuffle, because performing a task that seems really simple, like turning in your homework, there's multiple steps involved. It's putting in your backpack, remembering where it is in your backpack, remembering where to put it when you get to school, remembering all of the things. And there's so many tasks that get lost in that mix when executive function is something that kids struggle with.
And can one other thought came to mind, it related to that too. Instead of asking, is the child intelligent or how intelligent is the child? The better question to ask is, where is the child intelligent? What are their intelligences? Because there are so many. So asking, are they intelligent or what's the IQ? That makes it seem like it's one lump thing, and it's so misleading.
I love that. It's almost like saying, what are my child's strengths and how can we focus on those
Yeah.
rather than focusing on their perceived weaknesses? I really appreciate that.
And so,
So I
and I
have,
guess you could say, instead of how intelligent are they, it's how are they intelligent? That's a good way to put it.
that's amazing too. I like that best. So I had a few questions come in from my audience. And what if we do this? What if we just do rapid fire? I'll ask
Great,
the question. You can answer it from an executive function perspective. And if
great,
there's anything with sensory processing, then I'll answer it as well. Does that
great.
sound good?
How many are we doing?
3.
Great.
Okay. What insight or suggestions do you have to help teachers and parents working with students who struggle with executive functioning skills during remote learning?
One thing is less is more. Keep it simple, keep it small, especially for teachers. Don't expect things to be like they used to be. Like you're going to have kids who are just sitting by the device with their eyes closed, just laying there, acting like they're paying attention, trying to, like, it's really going to be hard. Less is more. Then I would also say visual, visual, visual. So this is for parents and teachers. The more you can use Google Calendar, be explicit in your expectations, teachers, put an FAQ on your expectations, teachers, really say things like, hey, teacher, on your FAQ, teachers say to parents, hey, if this is taking too long or there's a problem, just email me, or even offer up modifications and accommodations. So when I was a teacher, I used to do that. I would allow the students to pick one of 3 levels of what they wanted to do for homework, which really gives kids you can really do this. And then the kids that want to do, the easier version of the homework can do that. And the kids who want a more challenging version can do that. But you can just offer that. You don't have to wait and then, put kids in a position where they really get behind and stuff like that. So, but being explicit on Google Calendar or whatever portals you're using. Also for teachers, you have to understand that parents, sometimes it takes 15, 20, 30 minutes just to figure out what the heck you all want, especially if your kids are in middle and high school and they have 7 different teachers, to find all the portals. All the teachers post on different days at different times in different ways, use different grading percentages, blah, blah, blah. It is an absolute nightmare for parents, let alone the kids, to have to
Oh,
sift through
yes.
that, depending on their age and their executive function. I mean, if you have a sophomore in high school with strong executive function, they can sift through those portals pretty quick and find what they need. But for these kiddos, oh my gosh, it's really, they don't have the skill set to even navigate that. So be explicitly clear and simple and easy to find the information, make it visual. Parents, make visual schedules, get the big visual calendars, be creative about how you visually show routines in the household, whether it's toothbrushing or meal times or family time or work time, school time. Make them visual, put them on the walls, tape them to the desk, put them on the fridge. I'm telling you, these kids, their working memory, their ability to manage details, it's really hard. Give them the benefit of the doubt, make it visual for them. Then another thing for both parents and teachers is the more buy-in and ownership you can get from the kid, where you're not dictating, you're not telling them things, you're giving them choice, you're making it democratic, you're allowing them to feel like, even if it's what I call a false choice, where you're saying, hey, do you want to work on this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Hey, and if they choose 5, who cares? It's a win because they weren't going to do anything anyway. You really got to pick your battles and think about what you are really trying to accomplish here. Less is more. Sometimes a kid just doing a little bit of a skill, that practice can be really powerful for them. Where when we're shoving a million, problems down their throat of something, they're actually not even learning, they're just rushing to get it done. I hate to see students who are just trying to get it done because they're not in learning mode, they're in get it done mode. I want to get this stupid thing over with so my parents get off my back, my teacher gets off my back, rather than I want to actually push my brain a little bit. Less is more, less is more, less is more. Sorry, I'm kind of ranting, but I'm just like popping things in my mind, like what would help. So I guess the calendars, the visual, the 3-to-1 rule, where you're being really positive, noticing everything positive that they're doing, and then the reality check. I mean, parents who you might have two parents who are working, or you might have a single parent family with multiple kids, and the parents working, and they're supposed to like manage their kid getting on their devices to do this stuff, and then their devices are filled with distractions that are more interesting than the stuff that they're learning. Like, this is going to be a difficult time. Accept it, be okay with it, embrace it, and just plant as many seeds as possible. And then the last thing I want to say for parents and teachers in terms of this stuff, this isn't necessarily directly related to executive function, but is remember that this is about the relationship between you and your student, or you and your child. This is about how, you want to build your relationship with them and have fun and believe in them. You want your child to feel good about themselves. So don't forget to have fun and build the relationship. If you blow up and you have all these problems and you can't figure out, always end the interaction or end the day with, hey, I love you. I care about you. I'm always here for you. Sorry about what happened earlier today, but I am here for you no matter what. I'm not going to be perfect, but I am here. And like, always, always, always build the relationship, and always try to laugh and smile and find what's good, and not focus too much on all of these details, because we can get lost in it and lose the relationship.
I appreciate that so much because we know intellectually kids learn best through play. But when it comes to having our kids do school, there's so very little play involved in it, especially when we're trying to do it at home. Like you said, Seth, when we're getting home at 6 o'clock because that's what time we get off work. And then our kids have 3 hours of homework and we're in charge of doing it because it's remote learning, all the things. It's hard. But like you said, less is more. Do what we can and remember the relationship and visual.
And
I
for
love that.
teachers, homework doesn't have to be long. It can be one problem, or they can be so much shorter. It doesn't have to be worksheets. It can be creative. You can give the kids, like, the point of homework is, well, first of all, there's not much research that shows homework does any good. But in this case, with what's going on in the world right now, it might not be bad for us to really give them something to practice. But the point of homework should be to practice a skill, or to enhance your knowledge. So remember that if you're giving out a worksheet and everybody's doing the same worksheet and it's very easy to grade, that doesn't mean that anybody learned anything. So really ask yourself, how can I creatively do something super simple that everybody can have flexibility? So there's something teachers called content, process, product, environment. I'm not going to go into it, look it up. Content, process, product, environment. Give flexibility and choice in content, process, product, and environment. And and then also teachers learn about rubrics, because you don't have to grade every little detail of everything. Like, rubrics can really make things project based, much more engaging and interesting for kids when they're doing projects, where you can add flexibility in whatever you're trying to teach. And I am speaking from experience. I was a teacher for 12 years. I have a master's in gift and talented education. You can do this.
I love that too. So thank you for that. I'm going to add, just from a sensory standpoint, add in movement. Movement is so dang important.
I'm standing right now at my standing desk. Yeah. I'm like,
Yes, it is so important. We cannot learn sitting down all the time. So, and neither can our kids. They're just not wired for it. So the
good
next
point.
two questions I'm going to combine into one for time's sake, and also because they just go together. So first of all, does impulsivity relate to executive function challenges? And if so, how can a parent respond to their child who responds to everything through physically hitting and attacking?
Okay, I'm going to start with the impulsivity as part of executive function. Yes. So ADHD is what could be called an executive function disorder. There is no such thing as executive function disorder in the DSM, but if there are disorders of executive function, ADHD could be one. And one of the things about ADHD is impulsivity. Impulsivity means that you don't have a pause button, that you are having a thought and you are reacting. You are not pausing to think about if the reaction is appropriate given the situation. So impulsivity can look very different from kid to kid. It's not just the kid who's outwardly impulsive. There are other more subtle forms of impulsivity, but oftentimes, it's the kid who blurts out, but that's not always. So impulsivity is absolutely part of executive function, because if you're trying to execute something like trying to, read a book or do your planner or your backpack or whatever, you're trying to do something and you impulsively make a choice to do something that's not appropriate given the situation, and you just do the thing, then you're not executing on what was your main thing. So execution, impulsivity is a very sort of instant gratification-y type thing. Just made that word up. But
Okay, we'll go with it.
but we are just impulsively doing the thing. We're not holding back. We're not restraining. We're not thinking through whether it's appropriate in the moment. And the skills of not being impulsive and of pausing can be built, can grow, can be learned. Now, as far as a child who is impulsively, so like I said before, they are reactive. They're just reactive. They're reacting. So if they're reacting with something that hurts somebody else, with hitting or punching or biting or kicking or things like this, then that is a much deeper but related problem. Part of executive function is called emotional regulation. It's how we regulate our emotions. So, for example, if I'm outside and I see people on the street, and some people are really angry about other people wearing masks, and the other people are angry about the other ones not, their emotions are becoming dysregulated. So ultimately, we all want to have tools to regulate the emotion, to be able to listen to our story, see the big picture, regulate the emotion to be appropriate for a given situation. So a lot of times these kids don't have good emotional regulation skills. So they get a sense, listen very carefully, parents, to this. So we have this small part in our brain called the amygdala. So we have the narrative or the story, and the story for this child at this time, when they kick or bite or scream or whatever, at this time, the child is perceiving that they are being threatened. So the narrative in their mind is this: I am not safe. This is threatening. My parent. So if it's with a parent, my parent is threatening me. I am not safe right now. Now, that's their narrative. That may not be the truth of the situation. You may be trying to help them, but their perception is feeling threatened. So if they have a short fuse and they feel threatened, then they become emotionally dysregulated very quickly, and they just react without having a pause button impulsively to that stimulus. And so in this case, these kids need to learn the massive skill sets of emotional regulation. So there's not an easy answer for this one. Sorry, this is going to take time, because the kid has to literally work with their nervous system and their narrative or story in their mind about what feels threatening or unsafe. And they have to work with that with the adults in their life to learn to have a pause button, to not just react to the stimulus. So if you're already in this place, you got some uphill battle here, but this is doable. You do not wait, because it's not going to fix itself. Get outside help, get help from the school counselors, read books, get in support groups. I don't care what you do, but do not wait for it to fix itself. Dive in and learn about emotional regulation, learn about the nervous system, learn about the amygdala, and learn about fight, flight, or freeze, learn about polyvagal theory, learn about attachment theory, learn about a lot of these things. And these are all absolutely, positively, 100% related to executive function, because when you're dysregulated, you cannot execute. You're not in your prefrontal cortex. You're not in your thinking brain. You're in your fight, flight, or freeze, and in a primal brain that is not serving you in terms of being able to execute at that time. Now, there's a time and a place for emotion and appropriately, um, you know, working through emotions,
Mhm.
but this sounds like something that's obviously a more volatile situation.
Yes, I really appreciate your answer in that, and also reiterating that this is a skill that can be learned. Just because we have difficulties with something doesn't mean that we're written off forever. I had a parent that I was working with the other day. We were talking about emotional regulation in conjunction with sensory regulation as well. And they said, well, what do we do? Do we just excuse it for the rest of his life, just knowing that he has sensory issues? And he said, absolutely not. You teach them this skill, and it is something that can be learned. And it isn't something that happens overnight. It's not just a quick fix. There's one beautiful parenting answer that you find on Pinterest that fixes everything, right? Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't
But
that be nice? Yeah.
if so, you and I would not be here right now. We would, I don't know what we'd be teaching in the classroom. But this was fantastic. I don't have any other questions. So let's, before we end, talk a little bit about the summit and where people can get it and what that's going to include and why that's important.
Yeah, the summit for parents is called TFOS, the Executive Function Online Summit. It's at executivefunctionsummit.com. Executivefunctionsummit.com. Therapists, teachers, grandparents, anybody's welcome, but it is made for parents. And we have 24 experts who are going to be talking all about all sorts of aspects of executive function. It is going to make your brain hurt by the end of the weekend. It's a 3-day event, August 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. But if you can dive into as much of it as you can, you will walk away from this free event absolutely having learned a lot and feeling not perfect, but a lot better about your situation and having a real grasp and understanding of a lot of really deep concepts that will help you help your child. So you sign up for free. It's free for 3 days. You can buy it if you want, but it is completely free for 3. Actually, there's a bonus day. And these are fantastic experts, many of whom you've probably heard of, including Wendy.
Thank you. I was actually going to say something to the quality of this summit. So I've seen online summits before, and I've been part of online summits before. And it was something that I actually decided this year I wasn't going to do because a lot of online summits are just kind of put together and they don't have super quality speakers. But I looked at this list of speakers, you guys, and I was blown away at the quality. They're fantastic. They're not just people who were chosen. Like Seth, you've done a phenomenal job. This is incredible content, such an incredible opportunity. So
Somebody was asking me how I got those speakers yesterday. And I was like, I'm relentless. I bug them. I don't take no for an answer unless they really don't want to. But if they're a heartfelt person and I really like who they are, I'm like, I will like be the squeaky wheel and be like, look, these parents need you. Like, come share with us. And I really want it to be heartfelt. So yeah, check it out. executivefunctionsummit.com.
thank you so much for doing this, Seth. I appreciate your time, and I'm excited for the summit. It's going to be great.
All right, everybody, go connect with your child today. Tell them you love them, look in the eye, give them a hug, give them some compliments, be sincere. Have a great day.
Awesome.